Good afternoon from sagebrush country in the pine forest mountains of northern Nevada. This remote, little-known mountain range has white bark and limber pine up high, hence its name, has some aspen, and has lots of other cool things we're going to discover. I'm going to take a sagebrush country look at it and invite you to ride along. This is the biggest town next to the pine forest range. Only place with gas. Hopefully there's gas. So you don't see that on every road. I'm telling you, there's wild burros in the area. So there's the pine forest mountains, and like most Great Basin mountain ranges, the water drains down into a valley, creates a playa, and that's a salt or mud flattish kind of area, usually whitish. This one is full of saltgrass. Saltgrass can handle the more salty environments that are in these soils because so much water evaporates out of them. But what got my attention is how green this saltgrass is for late September. Really interesting. Wanted to give you a little background on how I roll, because this is a remote mountain range. Pine forest mountains in northern Nevada are a long ways from anything. I don't really expect to see anybody out here, though there may be a hunting season going on, so I may run into a few hunters. But I don't just jump into a car and drive out here. I use a 4Runner. I keep it well maintained. I have 2 spares with me. Have to anticipate multiple flat tires. Made sure I had plenty of gas. As I head off into these mountains, I have to assume that if anything happens, I need to take care of it. Though I do keep a satellite texting device so I can contact my wife or others if I need special help, because I have to assume there's no cell phone access. So again, you don't just jump into a car and head into a place like this. You need to think about it and prepare for it. Pretty remote, which is why we like it. So hope you ride along. I'll show it to you. So here's the pine forest mountains from the west side. And no obvious trees from here. There is supposed to be white bark and limber pine up in there, and enough stands of it. They called it a forest. I'll be pretty excited to find it, and hence the name. In these Great Basin mountains, there's not a lot of water. Of course, water is life. If you look at the head of a lot of the bigger canyons where there would be water coming out of there, it's not unusual to find a ranch. That's where they located ranches. So there's one across the valley, sun shining on the roof, just happened to pick it up. Just wanted to show it to you. Especially in the morning as it gets cooler, if you watch on the road, snakes will be out trying to warm themselves up. This is not a rattlesnake, probably like a bull snake or one of those. So, you know, there's no reason to run them over. They're not threatening anybody. They're just kind of warming up, getting going for the day. Look at this little playa here. That's a lot more typical. They tend to be very white and bright because there's, again, a lot of salts that are there. As water evaporates, it leaves behind the salts that are in it. So over time, these little basins get pretty salty. So there's a wild burro. Just out here by himself. Okay, I'm starting to get a little excited. There's my road where I'm headed, and if you hopefully maybe see some signs of some pines up there where we're headed. So, hey, cool. So here's a little herd of wild burros. If you look in the middle, there's one young one. In fact, it looks like it's trying to eat off a mom there. Still in the foothills of the pine forest range. Pretty typical shrub grass vegetation here. Stuff with yellow blossoms because it blooms in the falls. Rabbit brush, some sagebrush, some horsebrush, cheatgrass, some other bunch grass though, which is great. And I look ahead. Maybe you can see on that peak are some pines, which is in my future. So hey, let's go see what we got up there. Looking back down, way we've come. Remember that playa that I showed you? Look how well that stands out, my word. Just looking at our future destiny. See that road? Climbing way up on that ridge. Pine Forest Mountains also have a few aspen patches. It's almost October. I was hoping that they would be changing color a little more than that, but there's a little color on that little patch in those rocky crags. Just a little creek coming out of that canyon. Of course, water means willows and cottonwoods. My lunchtime spot. Up into a nice patch of curleaf mountain mahogany. Does really well in rocky soil, so you can see it's favoring these rocky crags here. Nice little patch. So I'm at 7,000 feet now and up into an aspen patch. Still no color, just a little bit of yellow on them. But I imagine in a couple more weeks they'll be really beautiful and they'll really stand out on this mountain. This was my view as I crested the ridge. My first thought was, wow, I didn't expect this. It's a beautiful little basin. This little reservoir in the bottom. Go take a closer look at this. Looking down the little creek that comes out of Onion Valley Reservoir. And there is a ranch at the bottom. Taking advantage of that water. You can see a few crop circles as well. And this right here is an optimistic little picnic spot with a fantastic view. Boy, sagebrush is really in its element in these mountains. Going through a patch of mountain sage that gets about as dense as it gets. Okay, I'm at 7,700 feet now. Pushing up this last little bit to get to approach before a lake called Blue Lake. I continue to be surprised how beautiful it is in terms of, aspen. And there is that pine forest in the distance. My goal is to get up in it. So we'll continue to get up in there and see what happens. Gonna go up this trail a little bit, get closer to the Blue Lakes. And so far the hike up the Blue Lake has been in this aspen stand, which has been nice. It's warmed us this afternoon. The shade is welcome. Still mostly in the aspen stand. It's very peaceful. You can see a few of them are starting to turn yellow. And very quiet. I'm the only one up here. Still in the aspen. Kind of the whole trail's been mostly in the aspen so far. Again, very pleasant on a warm afternoon. Getting close to Blue Lake, the biggest of these lakes. A series of these just small little, what look to be carved out lakes. Just the shape of this canyon and that looks like it might have been glaciated. I'll have to look that up. So this is Blue Lake. Man, it's a beautiful lake. I like some of the trees along the side. You can see some of the aspens starting to change over there. And the pines all around. You know, it looks like kind of a higher alpine lake. Reminds me of that. Again, in what looks like a big cirque here. Maybe you can hear the wind in the pines. And yes, it makes me wish I would have brought a fishing pole. So I'm on the trail to the other side of the lake now, still in the aspen stands, but I always look at what signs on the trail I'm walking it on. And of course there's my track. You can see cow tracks, but no people tracks, which again tells me there's lots of solitude over here. So I'm on the other side of the lake. I wanted to show you this. I'm in a white bark pine grove, a few aspen. Notice how many of them are dead or dying. That is a very common thing across the West now. These trees are increasingly getting stressed. They're high elevation trees, and as our climate warms, which the data is clear, you can disagree on why it's warming. The data is pretty clear. As the climate is warming, these trees become more stressed because they're high elevation trees, more susceptible to a pine beetle that gets in them and kills them. Widespread occurrence across the West, and it's happening here too. Okay, look here. All right, check this out. If you look up in the canopy, I'm in a healthy part of the white bark pine. See, there's still a number of aspen in here. Aspen are an early successional species, meaning they are usually the first to grow, and then something like a white bark pine will come in later because they're more shade tolerant, and they'll get big and overshade the aspen, crowd them out eventually over time. This is a different view of the lake up in the pine grove, looking out across it. Boy, I've just thoroughly enjoyed my time here. Just have it all to myself. This beauty and solitude, something special. often is the case in life, I have a schedule to keep. Wish I could stay here longer. It's good for the soul. Just love watching the sparkles on the water there. Wonder how it's working out for Tyson and Heather. Apparently they've been at it about 20 years now. This is one of the smaller lakes downhill from Blue Lake. A little basin below. Definitely a shallower lake. Tell by all this aquatic vegetation. And I've seen no fish roll here, meaning surfacing to capture insects. I'd be real surprised if there's any fish in here. I've not talked about the difference between white bark and limber pine. Here's an example where I think this is a white bark. They tend to have very open canopies. And the darker green, tighter canopied conifers here are probably limber pine. The best way to tell is cones. Limber pine has a lot larger cone, but I've not been able to really find many cones. So anyway, that's my best guess. Beyond the lakes, headed up over the top of the mountain to the other side, the east side. It's a rougher road over here is an example of kind of road I'm experiencing, which honestly is not a surprise. Now that's what I call a sagebrush expanse. Wow. Welcome to another dimension of the pine forest range. You can see why they were so excited to find some pines in part of it. So just looking ahead, I'm going to take this road clear through the pine forest mountains all the way to the highway on the east side, and there is my road as I'm looking ahead. And it's a bumpy one. Pretty main road, honestly. There's places would be easier to walk it than to drive it. I think I'd have white cows here too. It makes them easier to be spotted, easier to find them. Well, this is what happens if you're not careful. Boy, that thing's getting about ready to roll. There's nobody here, so I don't know. Must have left it and went for help. Boy, this is a very narrow road, and there's not many places to let even another vehicle pass, so I don't know what happened here, but they're off the road. There's no one around. Assume they've gone for help. I've not seen anybody else on this road, so it's not commonly traveled for sure. So there's only this road I'm on. The visibility in this landscape's amazing. So there's a far pass in the distance. I can see the road I'm on. See it going over the ridge there. Just up a little valley here. Boy, wish some of these old structures could talk. about what they've seen and been through. Let's take a closer look at it here. You know, you build with what you have available. Of course, there wasn't any trees around here, but there's plenty of rocks. Probably just an old line shack of some kind. So now you've been introduced to the Pine Forest Mountains of northern Nevada. As I showed you, there's a lot of variety in those mountains. Also, the roads can be pretty rough, especially the highest elevation portions of those roads. I think it took about 30 miles for me to travel from valley to valley up over the mountain, and I highly recommend, if you ever get a chance, go up into those blue lakes. The road's really not that bad going in from the west side up into the lake, and it's a beautiful place worth visiting. Well, thanks for riding along, and we'll see you next time.